Welcome to Under the Lens. Come and enjoy an extraordinary, raw, and unfiltered podcast that delivers debate, discussions, and interviews about film, pop culture, and everything in between. Here is your host, film critic and journalist, Byron Lafayette.
Greetings all, and welcome back to Under the Lens. Today we're going to have a rather fun episode, in my opinion, and especially for those who enjoy the Godzilla MonsterVerse that is currently taking the theaters, by storm again. Much to my delight and my guest who's going to be coming on. So today we're going to be kind of discussing the MonsterVerse spin-off show, Monarch Legacy of Monsters. And joining me today for this discussion is going to be film critic and my friend, Curry Morris. So welcome to the program.
Glad to be here, man. Always happy to discuss giant monsters.
Oh, same here. So what is your briefly, what is your experience with the MonsterVerse, I should say? And for those who are a little bit new, maybe when we say MonsterVerse, we are discussing the universe that started with 2014's Godzilla and that is ongoing.
Yeah, so for me, I'm a lifelong Godzilla fan. It was my first fandom as a child. Like I was a 2-year-old. Some people watch Bluey, some people watch Disney movies. I watched Godzilla as a toddler. So for me, it's a huge deal. So just hearing that there was going to be a shared universe in the style of Marvel with all the giant monsters I grew up with and crossing over Godzilla and Kong again, it's like, yes, this is everything I've wanted my whole life. And I've been there for every movie. I've supported it in every different tone it's had. It's not always been consistent. It's been a little all over the place. Never to the point where I didn't enjoy it. But I am definitely a fan, and I'm happy that it's seeing even more success now because it was a little unsure there for a while.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. Like I grew up watching, a lot of the older Godzilla movies. I absolutely loved it. When I was a kid, Terror of Mechagodzilla was like always being rewatched. Like I don't know why I liked that one as a kid, but I loved it. And yeah, I agree with you that, the MonsterVerse kind of was on a little bit of shaky ground for a little while. But I'm really glad that it seems to have found its footing. So it's like I remember being surprised when I heard that they were doing the spin-off show, Monarch, because it had kind of been in the
Yeah.
domain of theaters, and so I was kind of surprised at that. I should say pleasantly surprised though. So what did you think when they first announced it? How did you feel about the idea of a show that was focusing on the humans in a in a series that has not always been lauded for the human storylines?
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, first reaction, I thought it was weird that Apple TV got it, and not like WB or Max or something like that.
That was odd, yes.
But I will say, it is a legendary that kind of seems to be managing that more so than WB. Um, Also, it gave me hope because Apple TV is kind of known for being more quality over quantity with their productions, which maybe a little bit more arguable now than it was then. Um, but on the human aspect, obviously it's like, okay, this is a streaming series. Even if it's big budget, the monsters are going to be more of a backseat. They're going to have to be. But focusing in on Monarch is the perfect idea to really flesh out some of the more details of the world. We just didn't know what that would look like. I think my expectations may more have been like, I would have been okay with a monster of the week kind of thing, where they like go find, this kaiju in the Arctic and this one in, the jungle, and like it's Monarch. You kind of see the ins and outs, and that's not really what the show was. There's a little bit of that, and I kind of hope they get into that. We can kind of talk about that more. But I was excited at the possibility initially.
No, yeah, I was the same way because, like, I always really liked the Monarch organization in the films. I always thought it was a really interesting kind of or human organization that ran along the side. So, getting to know the history a little bit more, I was definitely excited about it. But yeah, let's dive in and chat a little bit about what you were saying with the story and the monster of the week thing, because I will say this, uh some people give me grief for it, but I'm a big network TV fan. Like I really enjoy, like NCIS, the new Hawaii Five-0, all that kind of stuff. So like I kind of, a lot of my TV watching is that sort of like monster of the week or killer of the week, mystery of the week, whatever. And so I would have really enjoyed something like that, of exploring different adventures with different characters, going different places, with every episode. And like you said, we did not get that at all. Like it almost felt like, and I was surprised that the show has that almost like 1970s like paranoid conspiracy thriller feel to it almost.
Yep. Yep.
hmm and I was not expecting them to go down the conspiracy route. I was not expecting that at all. What were you feeling when that kind of launched in the first episode?
Yeah, I kind of expected a little bit of it because
hmm
the movies hinted that there was like a long conspiracy with Monarch. And I'm not saying like it had to be the monster of the week kind of thing.
hmm
Um, I'm also a network TV fan. I mean,
hmm
Smallville's one of my favorite shows of all time. I watched Supernatural for the
hmm
better part of a decade. Same with Smallville. Gosh, I could name so many shows. My wife and I recently, watched Burn Notice as another one.
Oh, I love
We
that
started from
show.
the beginning. Having watched so many streaming series now and going
Mhm.
back to something formulaic, it's kind of formulaic in the sense of like the formula is that, like what to expect every episode. You can just hop in. Um, it's been kind of refreshing.
Mhm.
So, but I knew they weren't going to do that. Like as soon as the more information came out, like when they said Kurt Russell and his son are going to be in it, I'm like, okay, they're going bigger picture here. Um, so Monarch itself, I think, lends itself to the government conspiracy thing because that's literally like the basis of the story of the organization in the films. That like the monsters have all been covered up by the government.
Mhm.
But I don't, now we know it's been renewed for season two, but they also have said there's going to be other spinoffs. I hope one of those is like I'd even be okay with like a found footage style monster of the week. Like it's an on the ground Monarch crew, like archiving all this stuff because they have to get this information from somewhere. And like they can really dive into the original creations of the Monsterverse that they don't have to worry about rights for, like Kong or Godzilla. They could do Scylla, they could do the Behemoth or whatever. That would be really cool. But as
Yeah.
far as sorry, you go
Oh,
ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say I completely agree with you. Like I feel like the kind of found footage on the ground aspect would be really cool because this show obviously gave us kind of the high level bureaucracy, I guess you could say,
Mm-hmm.
of Monarch. And so like kind of seeing that like, hey, this is the guy who was just recruited, out of college to work for
Yeah.
Monarch, and where do they go? It's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna send you off to Beijing, for this sighting or whatever. I think that could be really interesting.
I mean, you bring in Matt Reeves as a producer and like do it in the style of Cloverfield,
mhm,
like man, that would be so sick. Like, and they could do it 30 minutes and doing found footage. It could be a way to save on budget. Like, I have so many ideas.
mhm,
Like, Legendary, if you're hearing this, I
mhm.
will be a consulting writer for a much more manageable fee. But, but going back to to Monarch, the show itself, it's called Legacy of Monsters. Um, I think it starts off really strong and ends really strong, but it kind of meandered in the middle a little bit too much for me. Um, I think it kind of lost sight of that government conspiracy stuff, which was clearly the strongest aspect, and gets way too bogged down in melodramatic material with the families. In my opinion, some of it's kind of captivating. Other times it made me want to roll my eyes so hard that fall out. But and I don't mean to sound that way with hot takes, but it does kind of concern me. Like, how long can this format and this story really last and not break the canon of the movies? Because there's a couple times with this that it gets into territory. It's like, wait, I thought the timeline was pretty well established in the films with Monarch, and now it seems a little mucked up, and the Hollow Earth and all of that. But I do have thoughts there, but I don't want to keep rambling until we
Uh,
get there.
No, yeah, I definitely I do agree with you. I think that the beginning and the end were extremely strong. You know, the middle, I would agree. It had had some slower moments. You know, the I wasn't terribly interested, you know, with the storyline of I'm trying to remember the character. It was his son Kentaro and May. I wasn't really that invested, you know, in their backstory and their relationship all that much, you know. You know, it was fine, you know. I get we had to have some character development with them and everything. But like I remember, you know, some of the time being devoted to that, I was kind of like, you know, let's get back to the good stuff. Um, but one other issue that I did kind of have with it that I felt was a little bit lacking in the show was that it didn't really have a villain, I should say, you know, with the show.
Yeah.
And you know, and I would have liked maybe some type of nefarious you know, I don't know, some type of nefarious villain in there. I think, you know, who was human maybe. I don't know who was after him or something. I don't know, might have been kind of cool. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, you're right, because Monarch was really the bad guy the whole time.
Uh-huh,
It
exactly.
was it
Hmm.
was like you're supposed the movies build Monarch up as this thing that's kind of like helped to protect humanity, and they're kind of awful in the show. And I'm not saying that TV shows have to have like likable characters, but this one struggled to have likable characters in the present. It gets very melodramatic and just like not interesting. Kurt Russell is obviously the best part, but the show really should have leaned into the 60s story, like the flashback story, because that was the strongest content. Like anytime it focused on that, the show was infinitely better.
I completely agree. And that's kind of an issue almost that I'm thinking of for season two is because, you know, you know, the character played by Kurt Russell's son, like you said, was an extremely strong character. The storyline in the back with was it Bill Randa
Mm-hmm.
was really
Yeah.
awesome as well. And it was just really great. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, I was like, I think they need to keep those flashback elements going in season two. I'm not 100% sure how they're going to do that. My
The
per
best.
Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, I had a version, but you say first.
Oh yeah, I had an idea of
Uh-huh.
like what they could do in place of that.
Hmm.
Um, I definitely don't think Kurt Russell's character is dead, Shaw.
Oh yeah, I
You know,
agree.
when he
Hmm.
sacrificed, all they have to do is say he got sucked into some vortex that reversed time and they can bring Wyatt Russell back. And then they can continue the romance with him and Grandma Randa. I can't think of her name either, but Keiko.
Oh, that's actually a very interesting idea because with the time differential that's
Because
going
she's,
on, like you said, they could have him come back as young. I hadn't even thought about that. That's a great
yeah,
idea.
because if Kurt Russell's like, nah, I'm
Hmm.
good, you know, they could do it to where it's some kind of affliction from the not hollow earth, wherever the heck they were.
Hmm. Yeah.
Which let me rant for just a second on that. Which, you know, the hollow earth is a big thing in the movies now, and
Mhm.
you know, the new movie goes more into the hollow earth, and there's secret areas of the hollow earth. So everybody thought they were in the hollow earth in this show, but it's like, no, they're in between the hollow earth and the thing. I'm like, so is the earth not hollow if there's a hollow section in between that and the hollow earth? I was like, it didn't make a lot of sense. I'm like, where the heck are they? I think they could have explained that better, and there is opportunity for them to explain that, but it is hard not to see it as conflicting with Godzilla versus Kong, because there was nothing about time dilation and like interstellar effects referencing the movie with like, hey, you've actually been down here a week, but it's been 60 years upstairs.
Y-
So I think they could explore that more, and using Kurt Russell's character Shaw and like the effect, like maybe it reversed him age wise. That could be a really interesting way to explore that further. Maybe they have to go back. I don't know.
that would actually be really cool because I do want to see, like you said, more explanation about the hollow slash not hollow Earth that was explored. Because I was very curious about that as well. Because, like you said, there was some seemingly different things that were going on with that versus the films,
Well,
and
they
so
even
hopefully
said
they
like we're
explain
in
it.
between, like
Hmm.
because they
Hmm.
said like the hollow earth theory like was true, but we're between there. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't remember exactly how they worded, but it's like, oh, okay, they're trying to do their own thing so that they can do their own rules.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of makes it that they can kind of do their own thing from the movies without contradicting too much. So I mean,
Mhm.
it's an interesting idea, and it kind of definitely expands the world a lot more. But yeah, like you said, I hope they do actually explain it a little bit more in season two, because I think that could be very interesting.
And
Um, mhm,
play off the lost time angle from Keiko. Um, anything where it's like people have been gone and missed chunks of their life,
mhm,
or like are should be old. There's so much good human drama to
mhm.
mine from that. That would be a strong focus, and they could easily, like I said, they could easily bring back Shaw, in
Mhm.
my opinion.
Yeah, and I love the idea of making of like, reverse aging him, because I think that, like I said, it brings back the best part of the show. But it also can, create that interesting, like you said, that lost out of time, storyline that they can do. So yeah, I love that. Now, speaking of connections to the films, what did you feel about to me, and I don't know, maybe you were expecting this, but I was completely surprised by the Mecha Godzilla storyline that is obviously going to be continuing into season two. I was pleasantly surprised by those connections. Were you expecting that, or was that a surprise to you?
I was not expecting
Mhm.
that. To me, that is a good opportunity to flesh out something that clearly got cut from Godzilla versus Kong. That's one of those world building things where it's like, wait, what is this company? Why do they have a tunnel from the United States to China?
Uh,
why why do they have access to Ghidorah's head?
mhm,
Why do they have all this tech? Where were they? So clearly that they probably looked at Godzilla versus Kong. They were like, this is too much for one movie. Why don't we throw this in this TV show
mhm,
as like a thing we can build up?
mhm.
And I think that's a smart decision.
Mhm. Yeah, so I remember, like, I enjoyed Godzilla versus Kong, but that was one area that I did want more information, because the whole idea of, the sun, being, the pilot being the sun, was so interesting, and I wanted more information on that. And then, like you said, where did they get, yeah, Ghidorah's head from? And then the whole idea of like Ghidorah taking over Mechagodzilla, like, I think that'd be really interesting to be able to flesh out the mechanics of
And
that.
and they would be really smart because the movie still takes place before King of the Monsters,
Hmm.
or I mean the show does, because it takes place right after 2014 Godzilla. And King of the Monsters obviously built out the world a lot for the MonsterVerse. Whatever your feelings are, I love that movie. And we know at the end, oh gosh, what's the actor's name?
Oh yeah, the guy from Game of Thrones.
Yes, oh, gosh, dude, I'm blanking hardcore tonight.
Oh,
Um, well, he buys Ghidorah's head, and like he obviously would have had to sell it to um Apex Cybernetics or whatever. So like, could they introduce him as a player in the world? Like he's his like eco terrorist kaiju black arms dealer or whatever. That would be a really interesting element to throw in for future seasons
mhm. Yeah, it
because it
was
also gives them
Charles Dance was
Charles
the
Dance.
yes.
That's what it is. Like imagine he's like harvesting like kaiju parts or
Mhm,
something because Godzilla's killing other kaiju
mhm,
that have woken up, but they've written themselves into a corner a bit because not all the kaiju are supposed to wake up until King of the Monsters.
mhm,
So I almost think they need to set it after that movie, like do a 2 year time jump or whatever
mhm.
again. Um, so there's a lot they can do to tie into the films and expand on the films and build them up while also focusing on like the human drama with like Shaw and Keiko Randa. Like leave the young people out of it if it's just going to be a love triangle because I just don't care.
I completely agree. Like, I think it would be really interesting, like you said, if they brought in Dance's character, that terrorist organization would be really interesting. And like you said, the whole mechanics of like the head and everything would be very cool. And it would I would like to see, Apex Technologies, fleshed out more as this, like, anti-monarch, honestly. I think it could just be a very, very interesting story.
Yeah.
And also too, it's an opportunity. I would love to see Tom Hiddleston's character
Dude,
come
I was
back
about to
in,
say that.
Oh, because we haven't seen hide nor hair of him since Skull Island. And so I think it'd be really interesting.
Him and Brie Larson
Hmm.
like would be such good grabs for that show, and they could
Hmm.
age them up if they needed to,
Hmm.
or say that they like did a mission after Shaw did to that not Hollow Earth place
Hmm.
and do the same thing. Like
Hmm.
they're actually young because of that. Like, you can science the heck out of it and hand wave it, and I'd be completely fine with it. And obviously, they're teasing something with Kong being more part of the second season
Hmm.
because he's in that final shot. So Godzilla was kind of the big thing of season one. I'm wondering if Kong will be more of the focus of season two. You
Yeah,
know?
it could be, and it could be very interesting as well because, it makes you wonder, with Apex, having their base on the on Skull Island. It could be, I don't know, they could explain possibly why the ecosystem collapses, by the time of Godzilla versus Kong. Who knows? That could be part of the story, which would be interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
there's so much they can do
mhm,
there, and you know, obviously they built Mecha Godzilla somehow,
mhm,
but they had to have some kind of prototype, right? And what if the
mhm.
prototype was Mechanicong, which is from King Kong Escapes, the mechanical
Ooh.
King Kong?
Mhm,
That's kind of a lesser known like Japanese King Kong film.
mhm.
But like that could be a really cool, like there's a Mecha Kong that they could do in
Ooh.
the show, like going to the monster side of things, which is kind of a good segue. Like
Mhm,
I think they nailed the Godzilla stuff. It's used a little more sparingly than I would like, but anytime he showed up, it was monumentally felt.
mhm.
It affected everything in the show. I loved that when he appeared in the desert, it was kind of a reference to his appearance when he shows up in Mothra versus Godzilla, the original one, covered in the dirt and everything.
Mhm.
Um,
That was a
and
great moment in the show. I really enjoyed that part.
yeah, and his fight with the bat creature at the end
Mhm,
was really cool. Little,
mhm,
again, little short lived.
mhm.
I think people going in expecting like 10 episodes of Godzilla were had the wrong expectations.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
I do think when you focus so much of the runtime not on the most interesting human story, not on uh the monsters and the legacy of them, or even the other unique kaiju in the universe they created, it's kind of like, okay, we need to refocus and retool season two.
Mhm,
All the ingredients are there,
mhm,
but it was more of an uneven show than I felt like.
mhm,
Give
mhm,
give me more monster lore, like mine the interesting stuff and dial back the stuff that just we don't care about.
mhm. Absolutely. And I think there's so much of the monster lore that they can continue to explore in the second season. I mean, because we saw in Skull Island how there's like the cave paintings,
Yeah.
and everything. So like I think, there's a lot of room to kind of explore the ancient history, of the monsters on Earth with ancient civilizations and everything. Like, they can absolutely, go the whole Indiana Jones route, make it like very adventurous and cool with this mythology.
Yeah, I think too, like it would be smart to dial back or find better focuses for what the characters and their purpose serve.
Mhm,
Like Kate is a school teacher. She doesn't have any real connection to Monarch outside of
mhm,
her parents and like any focuses. Same with Kentaro. It's like May is like a hacker, so she can like fit in, you know. So
and
bringing back like Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson, like you
mhm,
said, really, if season one was like, all right, we're the aftermath of 2014
mhm.
Godzilla. Okay, well then season two is seems like it's going to be the aftermath of Kong Skull Island. Bring back John C. Riley from Kong Skull Island.
Oh, he would be awesome. Yeah, he would be super. And what's interesting as well is if they wanted to continue the whole flashback storyline, they technically could do that if they wanted to bring back Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston and
Oh,
set the
dude,
flashbacks in the 80s, and
that
have
is a
them be, yeah,
great idea.
so it's very possible that they could do something like that, which would be super cool. Everyone would really like that.
That would be fantastic because those
Mhm,
are huge draws, and it's not like Apple didn't throw a ton of money at this one.
mhm. Yeah, and
That's
yeah, and he's
yeah.
done with the Loki show for now, so he has open time.
You know, it would be even crazier.
Mhm.
This was a fan theory that went around. There
Uh-huh.
was actually a leaked script that
Mhm.
did this for King of the Monsters, but it turned out to be fake. A lot of people thought that Charles Dance's character is actually Tom Hiddleston, but he changed his identity and became an eco terrorist after what he witnessed
Ooh.
Kong Skull Island. What if they actually did that, but used the flashbacks to build up why that happened?
Ooh, that would actually be amazing. And then they could have Dance return in season two as the older version.
Yeah,
Oh, I love that idea.
him
That, oh.
him not being present for the most recent two MonsterVerse movies
Mhm,
has kind of made me sad because that actor just has such a gravitas to him. So,
mhm.
dude, I still think that is such a great idea to just connect those two characters in some way, shape, or form because the age works out too. You know, if
The
And I
age
think
works out perfectly, and also, I mean, that could solve the problem that we talked about earlier of not really having a villain. That they could shape him up as the series villain, basically, which would be really, really interesting.
man, now
Oh,
yeah, see now I'm infinitely more excited about season two just because they can pull stuff that the movies didn't do. It's like, and if they've been planning like, hey, we're gonna expand all this with these expensive shows,
mhm,
go for it. I
mhm.
am all for it.
I'm all for it as well, and I think that I'm definitely excited for whatever the spin-offs could be. I definitely wouldn't mind even like a possible, like, I don't know, animated kaiju show or something like that set in the world maybe as well. Like,
Well,
I
they
think there's
actually
so
have
many
done one.
options. Oh, they have.
Yeah, the Skull Island anime on Netflix, which I haven't finished. I'm like halfway through it. It's actually decent.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look this up. Like, was there like not hardly any like marketing for that or something? How am I
There
hearing
was
about
not.
this for the first time?
It was announced like forever ago,
Uh-huh.
and it kind of dropped quietly.
Wow,
But
man, I'm gonna go and watch that.
yeah, it's this actually reminds me I need to go finish it. But they're testing formats and like, dude, imagine the found footage thing we talked about. Like that's like the monster part, and then the rest of it's the X Files, like but
Oh,
monsters.
mhm. I know.
This
It literally it writes itself basically. It's like it's so and like I feel like there's so much that they could add in, like you said, with the X-Files. It's like they don't have to go giant kaijus all the time. I mean, we saw in Cloverfield, remember there was all the weird organisms
yeah.
dropping off the monster that were attacking people. Like there's all kinds of stuff with
Well, even in
monstrous
Monarch,
things.
that's what
Yeah.
they thought
Hmm.
killed Keiko at the beginning. Those little things that
Hmm.
pull her down. That
Exactly. Uh-huh.
they could go with that, and
Hmm.
there's so many different things that they can do, especially if they set it like a spinoff a little bit later,
Hmm.
where like post Godzilla versus Kong, where the Hollow Earth has kind of been opened up. They're exploring all the new kaiju have been awakened. Like they obviously they could have babies, they could have all these crazy things, and then that format becomes clear because the world has been opened up and they
Yeah.
don't have to worry about
Yeah.
contradicting stuff.
Exactly. Like I honestly wouldn't mind almost if each season was like a companion to the movies. So we had like season 1 was a companion to 2014, season 2 is a companion to King of the Monsters, make season 3 a companion to Godzilla versus Kong, and etc.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
and it seems that based on how it ended with them ending up on Skull Island
Hmm.
and Kong being the last shot of the show,
Hmm.
they really could be like season two is going to be Kong Skull Island, Kong
Hmm.
focused.
Hmm.
I'm cool with that.
I am completely cool with that as well. It's like, man, well, what are your final thoughts on this show? Like, yeah, and your rating of it, and would you recommend it?
Rating, yeah, for Godzilla fans, I would recommend it for just because Godzilla fans watch everything with him. For MonsterVerse fans, if you really enjoyed the tone of like Godzilla 2014 and the Monarch stuff within it, and the Monarch stuff within King of the Monsters, where it was a little bit more grounded, even though King of the Monsters took it a little further, then I definitely say check it out and give it a shot. That opening 2 segments left my jaw on the floor, and the last episode made me cry. With the human drama really came to a good head. But just be prepared for eye roll inducing human drama in the middle of it, and the present day storyline, and pretty compelling stuff in the back. At the end of the day, I don't know how much it adds to the universe right now. And in fact, some people would say that it actually mucks up the timeline a little bit too much. I'm okay with it. I think it's good, not great. I think it has a lot of potential. Some of that potential was wasted. Some of it was formatted weird. Some of it just was too. There was too much padding where they wanted to fill a 10 episode order, and they did it in a way that could have been more. That could have been more interesting, in my opinion. So I'd probably give it like a 6 or 6.5 out of 10, like 3 stars or so. Um, I enjoyed it. I didn't hate it, but there was enough. There was a couple week stretch where I was just like, okay, I'm losing interest if this doesn't. And I know that sounds harsh because my motto is to always look for the good. And the big thing for me, especially when seasons of TV shows come out, you really got to look at it as a whole and not individual episodes. And if they landed the ship at the end, and they did land the finale, and I think that sets up a promising future. So I'm hoping they learn the lessons from season one and make season two even better and all the things we talked about. If we can sit here and talk about these ideas, then the writer's room can too.
Absolutely. I'm very, very similar in your thought. I would definitely recommend it to Godzilla fans. And if you're not a Godzilla fan, I don't know really why you would watch it. Because it is
Yeah.
very much, it is very much for fans of that. But it can be for fans of any sort of Godzilla. If you're just the MonsterVerse, whatever, I think there's definitely takeaways in there that you'll enjoy. Um, as far as a rating, I would probably go. I'm gonna give it a little bit higher than you, probably like maybe like a 7 out of 10. Um, and I give that extra half star in there mostly because I'm just a huge Kurt Russell fan. And I just like really, really liked his character a lot. And I thought it was just like, really, really fun and very entertaining. But yeah, I think, they stuck the landing, and it ended really, really well. I was very excited for season two. And I think when it comes to a show like this, the most important part is how you finish it. And that you leave people excited, because if a show has a bad finale, then that can ruin everything that came before. So I'm very glad that Monarch did not do that.
Absolutely. MCU shows, we're talking about you.
Yes, don't even get me started on Moon Knight. I was enjoying that show, and then I
Oh
watched the
man.
finale, and I was like, what in the world?
Moon Knight, I have, man, that'll be a whole separate episode.
Yeah, that could be something else we can talk about. But man, well, thanks for joining me, Curry. This was a lot of fun to talk about Monarch.
Yeah, man, thank you for having me. I'm always down to talk about all things Godzilla. And, but the big thing is like people approach these monster movies like they either have to be these metaphorical, allegorical, like commentaries, which are great, or they have to only be these giant monster smash fest, like entertainment spectacle things, which is also great. But Monarch kind of went for the middle approach. There's nothing really allegorical, and it doesn't deliver a ton on the monster fighting action. And I'm cool with doing either or. I'm cool with doing both at the same time. And maybe that's what they need to do is pick an identity and roll with it, because I think that's what the show's struggling with, is to pick an identity. So but man, I know you already asked for my final thoughts, but I thought of that and wanted to say it.
No,
Um,
that's it's very, very accurate because yeah, I enjoy all the elements of Godzilla. Like you said, I enjoy the big dumb fun and the more, allegorical element. And I think Godzilla is one of the few franchises that can really embrace both and that you can enjoy both.
Godzilla is truly like a comic book character. There's
Hmm.
no definitive incarnation. There's a flavor for everyone. So I'm excited to see how they adapt that for season two and for Kong, because
Hmm.
Kong is ripe for potential. He doesn't have nearly the filmography Godzilla does.
He definitely needs the development, and I think would be very, very interesting, especially developing him alongside the world of Monarch. I think could be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm
Yeah.
excited to talk about it as it comes, man.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. We will gather again, with season two and and for any other movies that come out.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks for joining.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. Let's stop the recording.